I wanted to talk today about cinnamon. Now, there is this thing on the internet called the Cinnamon Challenge, which involves attempting to eat a teaspoonful of cinnamon without a glass of water within a minute. Now, to me, that will constitute an overdose because the maximum effective dose of cinnamon is 1.2 grams. Now, cinnamon is an interesting substance. It smells quite nice. I'm not actually very much of a fan of cinnamon, and it's not something I use very much. Now, I've got loads of cinnamon. I've got maybe about 4 kilos of it. It's an interesting herb. It is not local, and in medieval times there was this legend of a bird called the cynomologus, which made its nest in the cinnamon tree, and that the cinnamon tree couldn't be climbed because its branches were too weak, and so people would throw sticks up into the tree and get the cynomologus to fall down. There used to be this idea that spices came from Arabia Felix, which was a warm, moist and verdant area of Arabia, which doesn't exist, although of course in my book Here Be Dragons it does exist because of the realignment of the axis which I mention in there. Cinnamon as an actual herb is warming. It's a real mess because it just goes everywhere. It's one of those herbs that just produce like massive clouds of stuff which, you know, sort of would eventually go mouldy and so forth. Now, it's actually not going to go mouldy very quickly. It's from the inside bark of the cinnamon tree, which is a tree which is in the laurel family. It's closely related to cassia. It's in the same genus, which is a laxative, which shouldn't be used because stimulating laxatives are not a good idea. Unlike that, it's got various different qualities. It's antiviral, antibacterial, antifungal, and it also works very similarly to aspirin. It's a cyclooxygenase inhibitor, so it will be anti-inflammatory and reduce blood sugar because it's sweetish. It's one of those things that's sweet but isn't a sugar. Now, a lot of sweet things reduce blood sugar. There seems to be a reflex to tasting something sweet that will reduce blood sugar, presumably to make space for more blood sugar and avoid an excess of blood sugar. But in this case, because it's not a sugary thing, it's not going to do that. So it will reduce blood sugar and is therefore useful for type 2 diabetes. Not necessarily a good idea to do that without seeing a doctor or something, or some sort of healthcare professional. That's the safe dose of cinnamon. That's about 1.2 grams. See what happens? Now, that's not the cinnamon challenge, that's just 1.2 grams. One of the things it does tend to do when people do that is it can make them vomit and it can irritate their throat. The reason for this is because if you did anything with that sort of powder, it would probably do that. It would do that with ginger. It's an excessive dose, about 4 times what it should be, and as a result you have a reaction to it. One point to make about this is that it's a very strong herb. It's actually dangerous if taken sensibly. You know, put it in baked goods, you can drink it, it'll go well in water. You can see that what looks like steam rising from it is actually the powder of the cinnamon. It's irritating. A lot of powdered things are like that. Now, I could drink that. It won't do anything dramatically horrible to me, but it won't be that nice either. But the point I'm trying to make is that clearly it does have a strong effect. This isn't the kind of thing that you're going to say, oh, it won't have an effect, or it's dangerous. If something's dangerous, in a smaller quantity, it's going to do something else, and it's going to have some sort of physiological effect. I think it's probably a circulatory stimulant. I know that it reduces blood pressure. I also know that it increases peripheral circulation, so you could, for example, it wouldn't be a particularly good choice, but you could use it for Raynaud's, which is a condition where the blood's cut off to your fingers and can actually cause them to ulcerate and become gangrenous in some situations. So basically, I suppose what I'm saying is cinnamon is not a herb I'm particularly keen on, but it is a useful herb, and when you think about the cinnamon challenge, you're talking about a herb having a marked physiological effect, i.e. vomiting and possible closure of the airway, which in a smaller quantity could actually be useful in one way or another. And it's actually a bit silly to say herbalism doesn't do anything, because clearly the Cinnamon Challenge proves otherwise.